So I grew up in a home with one Hindu parent and one Sikh parent, and one of the things that's really surprised me as I've lived in America is how little people know about Sikhism. So I wanted to take this time for some turban education. Turbans are worn all around the world by men and women in a lot of different cultures for various reasons, religious, cultural, practical reasons, but I want to focus on the turban worn by Sikh men. Now, Sikhism is a religion that was developed in India. It started in the 15th century and was developed over 300 years by 10 gurus. It's not a form of Hinduism and it's not a form of Islam. In fact, it was developed sort of as a response to those religions as they were being practiced in India at that time. In fact, Sikhism rejects the Hindu caste system. So Sikhism is a monotheistic religion. It believes in one divine God who is non-gendered. And Sikhs don't believe that they're the chosen people. They believe that all gods are the same, it's just different paths to get there. There's a real focus on service in Sikhism, which can be seen through the practice of langar. Langar is a meal that's given to anyone who comes to the Gurdwara or Sikh temple. Sometimes in the Golden Temple, they'll serve up to 100,000 people meals in a day. So this is with no proselytizing or expectation of anything in return. There's also service, history of military service. That's my grandfather in the black and white photo there. And I think the military service comes from the fact that Sikhism in the 18th century was really done in response to religious oppression that was happening in India. So the 10th Guru codified sort of the visual markers of Sikhism as you probably recognize them today. He gave us the 5 Ks, which are sort of articles of faith that you'll see most Sikhs wear. You also got all of Sikh men to use the name Singh and women to use the name Kaur to show equality. Now, because there's this long hair now as a part of the markers of Sikhism, we wear turbans, or most Sikh men do. Turbans can be anywhere from 6 to 7 yards, 2 yards wide. It's like a 2-person job just to fold the damn thing. And they can be worn in a lot of different styles and different colors. That's just a personal preference. Before a young boy is ready to wear a turban, he'll often wear a patka, which you see in the light blue, which is like a kerchief over a top knot. Sometimes women wear them as well. And now, as young men are embracing turbans as a part of their Sikh faith, it's also a way of expressing your identity. So fashion is a really fun way to do that. So now I see in the West some images of Sikhism and turbans that are a little bit different than what we've traditionally seen. But I still feel like in America, that's not what we're used to. Sikhs came to America 125 years ago, originally to California. And there's between 300,000 and 500,000 Sikhs here. But still, there's so much ignorance around who they are. And I think this might be because usually when you see images of people in turbans in the media, they are always the villain, right? They are nefarious, they're usually violent, and at best maybe they're going to be sort of used for comic relief because they're bumbling and ridiculous. And I think the combination of ignorance and this kind of messaging has led to a lot of suspicion, which makes it really tough for Sikhs to travel in the States. I was happy to see a few years ago TSA regulations about how to sensitively screen Sikhs in the airport. When I went to search for it, it had been removed. And this often, there's not a long step from suspicion to hatred. So the first hate crime after September 11th was the killing of a Sikh in Arizona. The perpetrator of the crime said, "I'm going to go out and kill some towel heads." In 2015, then, there was a huge attack in Wisconsin in a temple where white supremacists came and just opened fire on a congregation. So there have been a lot of attacks on Sikhs in America over the last 16 years. It's hard to get really specific stats on the hate crimes. Here's just a small selection. But it's hard to get those stats because hate crimes statistics don't roll up from the local level to the federal level, so we don't exactly know. But the Sikh Coalition said in the first month after September 11th, there were 300 reported attacks and instances of discrimination. Now, this is because there's a culture of Islamophobia in America. But one thing I've been really happy to see is that Sikh activists have been really careful not to say, we're not Muslim, because we know that that's just going to perpetuate the hatred. And I feel like if we can build these kinds of bridges here in the States, maybe from having this information too, you can start seeing Sikhs as I do, which is in a fun-loving way. These are our friends, our neighbors. They're also great partiers, but that's probably a talk for another time. And just know that when a Sikh man decides to wear a turban and go out in the world, it's a big choice. You are so conspicuous. Of course, that's a little bit by design, but it's a lot to go out into a world that doesn't know who you are. So I would just ask that the next time you see a Sikh, greet them with the traditional greeting. It's Sat Sri Akal. So say it with me, Sat Sri Akal, because then they'll know you're not just saying hello, you're saying, I see you. Thank you.